Thank you. So the first thing I'm going to touch on is the idea of collateral consequences of convictions. Obviously, when somebody is convicted of a crime, they're penalized in some way, shape, or form. That they're sent to jail or prison or given fines. But when we talk about collateral consequences, we're talking about the effects of a conviction beyond just the initial punishment phase, right? So when somebody's convicted of a crime, employers, landlords can see these convictions by running a criminal background check. And as a result of that, that can limit that person's ability to really maximize their potential in society, right? And it's estimated as many as 80 million people have criminal records in the US alone. So that's a huge amount of people when you think about the fact that I think the US population is somewhere around 320 or something. It's beyond 300 million people, but that's a significant portion of people that have criminal records on their record. And obviously a significant amount of people that are facing issues or barriers with respect to day-to-day lives, right? So many states like Michigan have some type of process that allows for the expungement of certain convictions, right? We estimate that 2 to 3 million Michigan residents have criminal convictions alone, and then as many as 45,000 new felony convictions are added each year by the court. So that just kind of highlights the need to continue to have these types of outreach events, or just in terms of spreading the word, in terms of what the options are with respect to getting a conviction expunged from your record. And then we estimate as many as 3,000 expungements are granted annually through court petition. So a lot of people want to know, what does an expungement mean? It essentially is the removal of a conviction from your criminal history. Traditionally, the only route to getting something expunged is by petitioning the court, which involves essentially filing an application with the court, having a hearing in front of a judge, and then having the judge sign off on the expungement. Before we even get to Clean Slate, obviously Clean Slate went into effect in April 11 of 2021. Prior to that, the law was even more restrictive. So under the previous law, you could only have no more than 1 felony and 2 misdemeanors on your record. And even then, not all convictions were eligible for expungement. So it was pretty strenuous, and there was a fee associated with it. There still is a fee. And then the processing time is at least 6 months in some courts. So the petition-based process, which is what we'll talk about, is a pretty lengthy process. It has been streamlined somewhat by the Clean Slate Act, and we'll get into that shortly. But it's still something that we obviously encourage people to get legal counsel if they can, to help with filing expungement motions. So one of the things, and again, I've only been around at Safe and Just for 6 months, but prior to me, way before I came on board, they were working behind the scenes to help expand the law, because they realized that the eligibility criteria was pretty narrow. So, and just using the old law, for example, under the old law, if you had 1 felony and 3 misdemeanors, you would not be eligible because you would be over the threshold amount of 1 felony, 2 misdemeanors. So understanding that the criteria was too narrow, we recognized that there was a need to expand the law, and that's where the Clean Slate Act came into fruition. All right. This is just some research that went into, some of the reasons as to why the legislature decided to expand the law. less than 7% of eligible people were able to successfully navigate the current process. So that was one of the big statistics that came out of this study. People who did get an expungement, their income increased 23% in the first year. So that was obviously something that lawmakers considered when thinking about enacting this new clean slate law. And then the recidivism rates compared favorably to the general population. So there's this concern that, oh, if you expunge a person's criminal record, they will repeat that type of activity. But what they found in this study was that they're not more likely to engage in criminal activity than the general population, right? And so that kind of was a narrative that was found to be unfounded based on this research that was done by the University of Michigan Law School. So we've talked a lot about the petition process. And again, that involves petitioning the court to have your conviction expunged. But one of the good things about the Clean Slate Act is there will also be an automatic component to this that will allow for the automatic expungement of certain offenses. That actually started in 2018 in Pennsylvania. It was the first state to pass an automatic expungement law. And that kind of provided us with the foundation to build from in terms of, the blueprint, if you will, to see how they did their automatic expungement system and how that can then be implemented in the state of Michigan. Essentially, how it works is there's an algorithm that is used to go through somebody's criminal history, and that algorithm will then erase or remove certain criminal convictions from that person's record. And that's how it was used in Pennsylvania, and that's how they hope to use it in Michigan next year. And so for those of you who don't know, the automatic expungement system is supposed to get up and running in April of 2023 of next year, but that is contingent on the entities involved. So like the Michigan State Police, the courts, all of them coming up with a system that would allow for the automatic expungement of certain offenses. So while we hope it's going to be April 2023, we still have to wait and see and kind of hope that, everything falls into place so that can happen. I know I've said a lot so far. Does anybody have any questions about kind of how we got here? Any questions about the automatic expungement system before I continue?
Theoretically, who will qualify for the record sealing if it goes into effect next year?
So it really comes down to the types of offenses that the person has on their record. So for misdemeanors, there's a 7-year wait period before they can be automatically expunged. For felonies, there's a 10-year wait period. And I believe in the next slide,
yeah, this kind getting ahead of myself.
Well, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. So, after 7 years, misdemeanor offenses will be automatically expunged, and then up to and after 10 years, certain felony offenses will be expunged. I emphasize certain because not all felonies and not all misdemeanor offenses will be automatically expunged. So like offenses that are considered to be serious misdemeanors or assaultive crimes will not be automatically expunged. It doesn't mean that you can't petition the court to get it expunged. It just means that it just won't be expunged automatically. You'll have to work for it essentially. Crimes that are considered crimes of dishonesty, will not be automatically expunged. So like embezzlement, racketeering, those types of crimes will not be automatically expunged, and you'll have to petition the court to get those types of offenses expunged. The other thing about the automatic expungement process is there is a limit on the amount of offenses you can have expunged over your lifetime. It's up to 2 nonviolent felony offenses and up to 4 nonviolent misdemeanor offenses. So that's the limitation on the amount of felonies and misdemeanors you can have automatically expunged.
He asked if you could repeat that part.
So there is a limitation on the amount of offenses you can have automatically expunged. So you can have up to 2 nonviolent felonies automatically expunged over your lifetime, and up to 4 nonviolent misdemeanors automatically expunged over your lifetime. There is a loophole in the law that allows for misdemeanors that are 93-day or less offenses to be expunged without a cap. Or what that means is, if you're familiar with the criminal justice system, you'll know you can have a 90-day misdemeanor, a 93-day misdemeanor, a 1-year misdemeanor offense. So theoretically, if you have a bunch of misdemeanors that are punishable by up to 90 days in jail, for example, there is no limitation on the amount of those you can have automatically expunged. There is a limitation on the amount of 93-day or more misdemeanors that you can have expunged over your lifetime. Does that answer the question, Pusanad?
Yep.
All right. So I know we kind of skipped a couple of slides, so I'll just go back to I'll just kind of go back into, we've really pretty much been dealing with phase 1 of the clean slate process, because as I mentioned, the automatic stuff doesn't come into effect until April of 2023. So for the past year or so, we've been dealing with the petition process. Under the new law, a person can have more than 3 felony offenses in order to be eligible for an expungement. So if they have more than 3, they would not be eligible. If they have more than 3 felony offenses, they would not be eligible for expungement of any of their criminal offenses. There is an exception. There's something called a 1 bad night provision under the law, which basically allows a person to count multiple felony offenses that arose from the same incident and that occurred within 24 hours of one another. You could theoretically count those offenses as one, as opposed to separate felony offenses. Even in that case, there's an exception to the 1 bad night law, and that if it involves an assaultive crime, a use of a dangerous weapon, or if the offense is punishable by more than 10 years, you don't get the benefit of the 1 bad night exception. So an example would be if somebody picks up 4 larceny from a building convictions arising from 1 incident. In theory, they're over the 3 felony threshold, which on its surface would make them ineligible, but they could theoretically count those 4 felonies as 1 offense under the 1 bad night exception if those 4 felonies arose from the same incident and occurred within 24 hours of one another. All right. Couple other things to keep in mind. There are different ways. Did you have a question, Megan?
Yes, I do. How you doing, sir? Okay. When you say the 1 bad night, and you talking about 2 felonies within the 24-hour time. Okay. So just myself, for example, it was a law enacted in 1977 that was called "One with a Gun Get You 2." And so what they were doing, the court systems were randomly stacking multiple convictions on individuals because they knew that you could only have one felony conviction expunged. Okay, so with that being said, and that's not gonna be automatic, trust me, I've been with this expungement for the longest, years and years and years. Okay, so with that being said, how would you guys categorize that? Like I said, that law was enacted in 1977. One would gun get you two. So therefore, you were getting multiple sentences off of one crime.
Did you catch that?
I caught the gist of it. So obviously it's hard for me to give you an opinion just because I don't know enough about, your circumstances. But what I will say, generally speaking, when I'm evaluating a one bad night scenario, I'm looking to see if the incident in question, if it arose from the same incident, right? Yeah. And if it occurred within the action of the defendant, if the convictions occurred within 24 hours of one another, right? And sometimes that isn't always easy to determine because the cases may be extremely old. You might be relying on the defendant's recollection of the event. Not that the defendant is lying or anything, but it might have been a while and they don't necessarily know what may have transpired. So for one bad night scenarios, it's always good to, if you can, look at police reports, look at court records, to kind of corroborate or to prove your one bad night argument, because in all likelihood, the judge or the prosecutor may have reservations with granting the expungement if you can prove that this in fact falls within that one bad night loophole. The other thing to keep in mind, and it's on the slide as well, there are certain, if the one bad night scenario involves a use of a dangerous weapon, it involves an assaultive crime, it involves a crime punishable by more than 10 years, you don't get the benefit of that one bad night provision. So an example, the last example I used for larceny in buildings, if I would have flipped that and say I had 4 felonious assaults that arose from the same incident and occurred within 24 hours of one another, even though they seemingly fall within the one bad night exception, because it involves an assaultive crime, I don't get the benefit. I'm not allowed to basically count those 4 felonious assaults as one offense. They're going to treat it separately. Okay.
I mean, I totally understand that. Yeah.
So yeah. So again, I don't want to give you an opinion without obviously looking, knowing the details of your situation, but I'm just explaining, like, generally speaking, what you're looking for with respect to one bad night scenarios. And again, it's one possible way of getting around the 3 felony threshold, right? So if you have more than 3 felonies, that's one way of getting around that issue. All right. The other big thing with the new Clean Slate law is that there are varying wait periods. So traditionally, it's been 5 years for any type of offense, whether it was felony or misdemeanors. Now there are varying wait periods. So for non-serious misdemeanors, there's a 3-year wait period. For one felony, there's a 5-year wait period, and for multiple felony petition or convictions, there's a 7-year wait period. As some of you may have heard, they recently amended the law to allow for first-time violations, DUI violations, to be expunged. That has a 5-year wait period as well. And again, for the first-time DUI offenses, you literally have to have that one DUI in order to be eligible under that exception, under that DUI exception. On top of that, the legislature basically carved out an exception for minor marijuana offenses to make it easier for individuals to have those expunged. It's not as complicated a process as you would if you were trying to expunge a non-marijuana type of offense. So that's one of the good things about the new Clean Slate law.
We have another question.
Sure.
What was the point about DWI?
So,
He was asking for more clarification about the DWIs or DUIs.
so traditionally, you have the law didn't allow for expungement of any DUI offenses, period. But in February of this year, they amended the law to allow for expungement of first violation DUI offenses. So what that means is, or I should say how that has been interpreted is, the individual has to have that one DUI offense on their record in order to be eligible for expungement of their DUI offense.
So if you only have one and it's 5 years old.
Right. So if the individual has multiple DUIs, they would not be eligible for expungement of their DUI offenses. They may be eligible for expungement of their other other offenses, just not the DUIs. Does that answer your question?
Right, so, I had multiple DUIs, but all of them were 20 years old.
What if there are multiple 20 years old?
Unfortunately, how the new amendment has been interpreted is the individual has to have one DUI. So if you have multiple DUI offenses, you wouldn't be eligible to expunge
Any of them.
any of them. The other thing, and I'm glad you brought that up, that's a question that we've gotten a lot at some of these expungement fairs that we've been a part of. People think that by expunging their DUI offense, it will lead to their license being restored. And what's important to keep in mind is that it's two separate processes. So the Secretary of State has their own process in terms of restoring your driving privileges. So even if you're able to expunge a DUI in criminal court, it won't directly lead to your license being restored by the Secretary of State. You would still have to petition the Secretary of State to get your license back, or whatever restriction you might have as a result of the DUI offense. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
What you're saying is you can get one expunged, but it's still possible to get my license back, just only one expunged.
If you have multiple DUIs, can you get one expunged? Or if you have multiple DUIs, you can get none expunged?
None expunged.
And even if they're not expunged, can you get your license back?
Yes, so there's a so there's a separate process altogether to restore your driving privileges, and that's through the Secretary of State. So when we talk about,
you don't necessarily need to go through the expungement process to get your license restored.
exactly, and even if let's say I had one DUI and I got it expunged, they wouldn't just turn around and then reinstate my license. I still have to petition the Secretary of State to get my license back. The court expunging your DUI doesn't lead to your license being restored by the Secretary of State. That's what I'm getting at, essentially.
Do we have another question over here? Yeah.
Okay, so what we're saying is in April of 2021, according to the guidelines that you guys, that Safe and Just has laid out, you can petition, you can have automatic if you fit the criteria. Okay, and then in 2023, if you fit the criteria, not for automatic, but then you can petition the court. So what we're saying is that those are two different entities, correct? Automatic and petition in the court.
Correct. Right now, you can petition the court. So if you don't want to wait and hope that the state gets this automatic expungement thing up and running in 2023, and you want to take it into your own hands, basically, you can petition the court to have the convictions that you want expunged, assuming you meet that criteria, right? But if you want to wait and see, if you don't want to go through the petition process, you could theoretically wait to have the state implement this automatic expungement system. But just keep in mind that there are certain offenses that will not be automatically expunged. You will still have to petition the court to get those offenses expunged if you want them to be expunged, essentially. And it's also contingent on the state actually implementing this system by April 2023. And again, there's no guarantee that that will, be the case.
Okay, so essentially what we said is for the petition of the court, you will have to wait until 2023, or you can start the process now through state and just.
Well, it's not really through. So we're not a legal entity in the sense that we don't help people file for an expungement. We help facilitate expungement fairs. So we kind of bring partners, legal entities together, and they have expungement fairs, and you can come to these fairs. They can run a background check on you, and then they can screen you to see if you're even eligible for an expungement through the petition process. And if you are eligible, then they can assist you. The attorneys at these fairs can assist you with filing for the expungement itself.
And I do have flyers here from Lakeshore Legal Aid, who the library has worked with before, but they do offer a variety of low-cost services, but expungement is one of them. So anybody can take one of those before you leave today.
And I'm glad you brought up Lakeshore Legal Aid, because Lakeshore Legal Aid, along with the other legal aids around the state, they do expungements year round. So you don't have to come to an expungement fair. You can contact, the legal aid in your area for assistance with filing for an expungement.
Kamara, is there a penalty for filing early? Or
So good question, Ronnie. Yes, theoretically, if you get denied by a judge, the judge can impose a 3-year wait period before refiling. And that's why it's important that you get screened by an attorney to see if you're even eligible to begin with.
And so is that what you guys do? Is screening and to pass it over to an attorney?
So what we do is we're more of a facilitator, right? So we kind of bring community organizations together with legal entities, and then we have these expungement fairs or clinics at various counties across the state.
But if someone was ready to move forward today, their best bet would be to contact Lakeshore Legal Aid.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's the reason why I was asking, because trust me, I have been to expungement fairs all around. I have had attorneys I've talked to, I've even had judges that I've talked to in regards to the expungements. And so that's why I was wondering what you got. Trust me, I've been following this process for years. And believe me, for years. And so that's what I was wondering. I mean, I had my background ran through check with Michigan State Police, Detroit Police Department, the whole 9 yards. So that's what I'm wondering. Is this what you guys do? You facilitate that in order to get to the next step Or are you just giving the person just an overview of what the criteria is in order to meet the automatic or either petition in courts?
So he's asking for a little more background on safe and just, and if today is more just like information and, or,
Well, today's more informational, but like as I mentioned before, we aren't necessarily a legal entity in the sense that we won't file the petition on behalf of the individual, but we try and bring the legal partners or the resources to the community that's affected by having these convictions on their record. And we try and bridge that gap. That's what we're essentially trying to do by having these expungement fairs. But as I mentioned, and as you mentioned, Megan, there are legal organizations that do this year round, right? So you don't have to wait for an expungement fair to reach out to an attorney for assistance with this.
I think we have another question.
Can I possibly get any other things expunged?
What other kinds of traffic offenses qualify for the expungement, like driving on suspended license
Or revoked?
or driving on a revoked license?
So I would say yes, those offenses are eligible for expungement, but that's assuming that the person doesn't have more than 3 felonies. So if you have more than 3 felonies, you wouldn't be eligible for any offense.
I don't have any felonies.
You're right. I'm just talking generally speaking, right? But to answer your question, yes, driving while license suspended offenses, driving with a revoked license, those offenses can now be expunged. The big thing with traffic offenses is if it involves an injury or serious death, those types of offenses cannot be expunged under the law.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Just one other question.
One more.
Okay.
I've been going through this process for a long time, really. I've been going through this process for a long time. And just pretty much every barrier that you can run into, I have felonies, I ran into them. I'm 65 years old. This happened when I was 17.
Ugh.
And I've been running into these barriers since 17. And I'm 65 now, and I'm still running into these barriers. So whenever this happened, I'm here. I just want to know, like I said, I've been to Spud and all over Michigan, Ohio, and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the other question I want to ask is Lakeshore Legal Aid. They're partnering with you guys, and do they, give up the assistance for this fund?
Yes. So I'm sorry, Megan, you were gonna.
No, go ahead.
Yes, Lakeshore Legal Aid is one of our partners. We're partnering with them on a fair that's going to be in Inkster in June. That's the next fair we're doing specifically with Lakeshore Legal Aid. And they've been great partners. And yes, you can contact them to at least get screened to see if you qualify for an expungement.
And you don't, like he was saying, you don't have to wait for that fair in June. You can call the number
No,
anytime.
exactly. You can call tomorrow. And right.
Not being perceived, but trust me. I've been going this. I was told the only way that a person can pretty much before all this. I was there. I helped the governor and acted. I voted for. I was out there campaigning for this because I know the setbacks of having felony convictions. What I know now. I do so. I'm just. I'm just here to hear exactly what you have to say. And I was told in order before all these other things came about, in order to have a felony expungement record, you would have to petition the governor, act in Congress. Yeah, I've probably been through it all. So I'm just, I'm here to hear what you guys have to say. Really, that's how you got to run to a burning building, rescue citizens, say driving kids on the school bus, acting heroism to have your record expunged or pardoned by the government. So that I've been in the fight for this for a long time. So,
Sounds like it.
I hope something good will come out of it. I really do.
Right. And you brought up something interesting about running into burning buildings, but one of the things that to keep in mind is even if you are eligible, at least with the petition process, you still have to go in front of a judge and you have to explain to the judge why you want it expunged and what you've done with your life since the incident in question. And that's where, character letters or letters of support, resume kind of showing what you've been doing can be helpful. But again, that you don't get to that stage until you can at least show that you're eligible or you meet the criteria under the law. So there is a discretionary component to this that, really falls on the judge in terms of deciding whether or not the expungement should be granted or not. This slide and some of the things on this slide we've already touched on. When will automatic expungements become effective? Again, we hope that it will become effective in April of 2023. Why was there a 2-year implementation period? Probably because, something on this scale is going to take time to be implemented in terms of getting the various entities on board. You're talking about the Michigan State Police, the various courts. They all need to kind of be on the same page with respect to automatically expunging certain offenses. And that's going to take some time. How will I know if my record is cleared with the automatic expungement system? That's an excellent question. I think that's something that they're still currently working on in terms of how people will be notified that their offenses will be expunged. And perhaps that's why the 2-year implementation period was used to give the state enough time to work out some of these kinks with the automatic expungement side of things. Commercial background check companies. So this is something that comes up often. Sometimes you can have a conviction expunged by the state police, but you have private background check services that don't always update their records, and they may still have a conviction that was expunged still showing on the background check. Unfortunately, it's something that it's pretty hard to kind of regulate because you have so many private background check entities across the state, across the entire country. So it's something that I know that they're trying to work on. I'm not sure if they've figured out a way to handle this issue, but it's something that continues to be a problem for people who do get convictions expunged off of their record.
I have a question, if that's okay.
Sure.
So let's say you're doing the petition process. You said you have to go in front of a judge. And I saw earlier that you had to do your petition where the conviction was. So is that still the case? Like if you live in Traverse City now, but you were convicted in Grand Rapids, you have to travel?
Correct. Yeah. So you have to, at minimum, file in the convicting court in that jurisdiction. So you would have to file in Grand Rapids or where the conviction originated from.
Okay.
A hearing would be scheduled. Nowadays, with the advent of Zoom, a lot of these hearings are being held via Zoom. I know more and more they're doing in-person hearings. Quite frankly, I hope they keep some hearings for Zoom. just because it's convenient for a lot of people. But that's kind of the process with respect to filing these expungements. This is actually an example of the application form that you will have to fill out and sign and file with the court. And, you know, basically kind of outlines the step-by-step process through which you can file.
And I think we had another question.
Go ahead.
Yes, I attempted to expunge or request expungement when I carried out, and I petitioned the county that my convictions were in, and that county, which is Oakland County, told me I had to petition the county that I currently lived in. So they gave me the opposite.
So I don't know if you caught that. So we have someone who filed a petition in the county of conviction, but was told by that county they need to file in the county where they currently live.
That's not, that goes against everything that's not my understanding of the process. You would have to, the law is pretty clear. You have to file in the court that convicted you of the offense. So I'm not sure where the disconnect is with respect to that county.
It was Oakland, if you have any further info.
No, I know Oakland has a number of district courts, so I don't know, maybe it was in the same county, but a different court in that county. I don't know if that's where the disconnect was. But generally speaking, you have to file in the court that convicted you of the crime.
Okay. Sorry. So, and if people are looking for this form, where can they find this form?
It's readily available on the internet. If you type in application to set aside conviction, Michigan, this form should pop up.
So it's on like michigan.gov?
It's on a site called SCALE, which stands for the Supreme Court Administrative Office. So if you just type in SCAO and you type in expungement application, it should pop up.
Okay.
It's called an application to set aside conviction.
Okay.
And in fact, since I'm sharing my screen, let me see. Will it allow me to?
I'm sorry? Oh, he's asking if you can pick up the forms at Secretary of State?
No, the forms you can print, like you're in a library now, you can go on the internet and just print it off.
We can help you find it.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. Yeah.
We also have listed in our drop down at the library, I think it's Michigan Legal Aid. That is more of a do-it-yourself. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, it sounds like the
Michigan Legal Help.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a website that we link to that has a lot of kind of do-it-yourself forms and things. So if you wanted to try that.
That's another good resource as well. You're right. So yeah, that's pretty much it for our presentation. Does anyone have any additional questions? And then these are some of the resources that you mentioned. So Michigan Legal Help is a great resource. And then we mentioned all of the various legal aids around the state that do this routinely. And these are some of the legal aids that we've partnered with throughout the state. All right. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, and like I said, if anybody has any questions, Ronnie,
Oh, I think, can we have it back one more time? Some people
Sure.
are taking pictures,
okay.
and you can go back. And I have a question while we're doing that. So assuming the automatic record sealing starts happening next year, will they be looking at convictions that were finished? So that'll be 2023 in 2016. Is that 7 years? So will they go back 7 years from that date?
Yeah, so it's 7 years from the last event with the misdemeanor. So if I go back to slide.
Oh, and can you go back one from the legal aid pro bono? We're going to take a picture of that and then we'll go back to the,
This one.
yep.
You
In
got
a
it?
question.
You said something about, they do background checks for us?
At the fairs?
Yeah, is that something that is done here, can be done here, or?
I don't,
Yeah, like a voter search or, something along those lines, is that what?
he's asking about background checks. So we're not doing background checks today, are we?
No, so
Okay.
at the
But
fairs,
at the fair in Inkster.
yeah. At all of these fairs, you can they'll do it for free for you. Otherwise, anybody can run a background check on themselves. It costs about $10 via credit card or debit card to run one. It's done through the Michigan State Police. But at the fairs, it's free. And obviously at the fairs, not only do they run the iChat, they have an attorney review it to see if you're eligible. And that's why it's significant, right?
Okay. Okay, you can go back to the one with the date of the automatic.
Yeah, where was it? Thought I had it here somewhere.
Oh,
The date of the automatic, you said?
yeah. I thought I said. So that's phase one. Oh, April 11th, 2023.
Right.
So if I was released on April 15th of 2016, that would be 7 years. Well, I guess it would be
Yeah,
before
so
then.
the
April
7
1st.
years or the 10 years, whatever, depending on what type of offense.
Right,
It would-
okay.
It would start from the end of sentence or supervision.
Okay. Another question? And I think, can we close the PowerPoint? Are we good on dates? I think you can close it now.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm just, the one you said is gonna be next Monday. Do y'all have a address for that one?
is there an address or a location?
You're talking about the Inkster Fair?
Yes.
I believe it's gonna be at the Booker T Recreational Center. I don't know if you know where that is in Inkster.
The recreational center? We can
Yeah.
look it up too. and see.
Yeah, they haven't done a flyer for it yet, but I
okay.
know that Lakeshore Legal Aid has a pre-registration link for that event. So if you contact your Lakeshore Legal Aid, you can register for the event. You can pre-register.
In June. Do you know the date in June?
June 25th.
June 25th.
Yeah, from 9 to 1 p.m.
From 9 to 1. So June 25th is a Saturday.
Yeah.
June 25th is Saturday.
9 to 1 p.m.
And
on the 25th.
There's also gonna be another one in Wayne County. I don't have the exact location for that one in front of me. I know it's gonna be in July though,
Okay.
and I can obviously let you know when I know more.
Okay. If we are invested in making sure that this system is up and running next year, what would you suggest that we do this year to encourage or make sure that that happens?
Really, it's gonna come down to the people that are in charge, so like the state police, the courts, they kind of have to figure it out how they want this system to be implemented. There's also a tech component. So I don't know anything about algorithms or, none of that stuff. So that stuff is above my head. And I know they have people that are way smarter than me figuring that stuff out. There really isn't a way to speed up the process. They're gonna, whenever they've sorted it out, they'll implement it, and I can just hope that it'll be sooner rather than later. So
Are these fairs you're talking about, Wayne and Inkster? Are these, what are they exactly cover?
So I think that the fair in Inkster are these expungement fairs. So Lakeshore Legal Aid is the legal aid society that covers Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb counties. And so this would be where people can get the background check, talk with someone, see what they're eligible for before they get started with the process. Do I have that right?
correct, yeah.
But again, if you don't want to wait till June 25th, just call
Yeah,
and see what
you
your
don't
options
have to
are.
wait. Yeah.
It's something to do if you want like a temperature check, you know what I mean? About it. Get a feel for it.
Then suggesting it's a temperature check to kind of see where you are.
Yeah.
Any other questions? If not, I'm going to stop the recording, if that's okay.
There's actually limitations or anything where it falls off your record.
He's asking about a statute of limitations
Like the drunk driving.
currently
After 25 years or whatever.
where it just falls off your record.
Right.
And that's for what? Any offense? Or?
Any offense.
I know it's murder, or not murder, but like theft or different offenses it does, but I don't know if I doubt it with my luck, sure.
So are you asking like if there is at what point, what offense, if any offense, just comes off your record? Or drunk driving? Is there any
No.
point at which that comes off your record?
So that would be, it would have to fall within the automatic side of the law, right? The automatic component. And it would depend on what type of offense it is. So as I mentioned earlier, assaultive crimes, serious misdemeanors, DUIs are considered serious misdemeanors, so they would not be automatically expunged.
So even if it's been 30 years, it's not coming off.
It's not going to be automatically expunged. You would still have to, assuming you're eligible, you could still petition the court to get it expunged. They just won't just automatically expunge it.
Okay.
But again, that's contingent on you being eligible to begin with. So, it's all contingent on a lot of things working in your favor.
Is Safe and Just pushing for any other types of criminal reforms currently? Is there anything else we should have on our radar?
Yeah, and Ronnie, do you want to speak on
Absolutely. One of the big things is right now that Safe and Just is trying to push for is the elimination of life without parole for juvenile people under the age of 17 who have been sentenced to life in prison forever. So we're trying to help pass bills to eliminate that. That's one of the main things that we are focusing on right now. I think cash bail, we're also trying to push that through the legislature. We are working mostly to affect prisons. There's bills coming up that if anyone has any loved ones who are in prison or been in prison, you know how expensive it is for a phone call. At one time, it was up to $8 for 15 minutes phone call. So we're working very hard to get those laws overturned. We're trying to reduce the fee down to zero, but I don't know if we're going to get to zero, but we're going to hopefully reduce that cost a great deal. So yeah, Safe and Just Michigan is always working on things involved with the criminal justice system. And if anyone would like to sign up for our electronic newsletter, we can keep you informed on all the different things that we're working on. Happy to have you aboard. Information is, I don't know if I can you put the information up, Kamara, or so they can copy it?
Out to our registrants, if you want to email me,
Sure, I thought you wanted.
or I can put it in the chat.
Okay.
Put that up on the screen.
What was that, Ronnie?
Information on how they can get in contact with Safe and Just Michigan to receive our newsletter and follow us.
Yeah, I can send the email, the info at Safe and Just email. I think that was.
Yeah, is there any specific questions that they would like to know about Safe and Just?
Any other questions about the organization in general?